So this here is going to be a painting video for our foul BlightSpawn. So this is the model with the grenades and the big tank on the back, and fairly popular in the army, and he tends to buff a few characters and has a couple of very decent stratagems. So we had one to paint up. This is the final product. We're pretty happy with how it turned out. And if you have one to paint yourself and you want it to look like this, please feel free to stay tuned and we'll show you how we got here. If you find this video helpful, please feel free to leave a like or a comment or subscribe to the channel. And otherwise than that, we'll see you in a few moments once we start painting. So this here is going to be a painting video for a foul BlightSpawn. Now, when we did this, we didn't have any Death Guard spray paint, so we ended up base coating them in MECHANICUS Standard Gray, which is a generically nice color to use, but Death Guard Green would have been a little bit better. So our first color is actually going to be Death Guard Green, and with that, what we're going to do is just trim over all of the armor, clean up all of the anything that's going to be Death Guard Green. He is sub-assembled a little bit. I left off this extra piece here because it makes it easier to get access to the legs and such, but then after we're finished, that'll snap into place there and it will all come together and we'll have it all finished that way. So this is our model that we finished with the Death Guard Green, and as you can see now, it really kind of stands out a little bit better. All of the green stuff is done, so all the armor, we did all around the back, around the big tank, the back of the legs, the arms, everything like that. So from there, what we're going to do is add a dry brush highlight over the top of that, which we're going to do with some Nurgling green. And we're just going to basically literally just dry brush on. Nurgling green is a color that dries a little darker than it goes on, but it'll still work okay for a high edge highlight or a surface highlight. So just brush it on lightly but liberally. And you see it brightening up quite there right now. Do it a few more times and you'll catch that edge. Just like so. So we're going to keep doing that over all of the armor. And then in the end, once it's all shaded, it'll all blend together quite nicely. So there's our model now that we finished with the Nurgling green. And as you can see, it really brightened up the model quite a bit. We got our nice edge highlight along the edges, top of the armor here, up around the brow, all along the arms, things like that. We've got some depth to the shoulder pads, and then as well as over the top of the tank. So for our next step, what we're going to do is start coming around on the trim, which is also going to get the same shade in the end of Agrax Earthshade, so we may as well do that now. So we're going to take a little bit of Balthasar Gold, and we're just going to go through all of the trim up around the shoulder pads, up around the chest piece, the plate here, the other shoulder, the spikes, around the tank, all of the framing. So we'll do all that with the Balthasar Gold, and be back here in a few minutes once that's all done. So this here's our foul BlightSpawn now that we finished with all of the trim with our Balthasar Gold. So as you can see, we did the shoulder pads, everything around the back canisters here, all of the trim on the front plate and on the legs. So our next color we're going to use is going to be this Rakarth flesh here. And normally we use that for skin and bone. So any of the bony processes or any of the Death Guard, as well as any of the zombie heads or skulls. So there's one here on this Blight grenade. There's one more hanging from his waistcoat. A few more hanging on the back of the model. So all of those we're going to do with the Rakarth flesh. And then we'll probably do some of the process here, extending his nose. And then we'll meet back here again in a few minutes once all that is finished for our next color. So this here's our foul BlightSpawn now that the Rakarth flesh is done. So as you can see, we did just this little bit of the nose here and then just these little skulls around. So we're almost ready to shade the entire model here. But what we're going to do next is start doing some of these metal tubes as well as most of the metallics on the back pump system here, as well as the spout, and then the extra piece that goes here. We'll paint that up separately and put that together. So we'll do all that with some Leadbelcher, and then that way that'll be done before we come in through our shade where we have a lot of rust. So we'll do that now and be back in just a few minutes. So this is our foul BlightSpawn, and now that we're finished the metallics here, all of these metal braces for the big tank is done. All of the extra extension arms we added back onto the model. All the bottoms of the grenades, all the handles, anything along those lines there we finished. So now it's time to shade our model. And what we're going to do is take a little bit of Agrax Earthshade, which we've got right here. And we're just going to do pretty much the whole model itself here. All of the metallics, all of the armor, pretty much all of the back. We won't do the faces because that's flesh. So we'll do that later with a different shade. But all the rest of the tank and things like that, we're going to do right now with our Agrax Earthshade. And we'll be back here in just a few moments once it's all done and dried. So this is our foul BlightSpawn now that we finished with the Agrax Earthshade. And as you can see, all the details have really popped out quite nicely. So you can definitely see all the cracks in the armor, the pits, the little bullet holes, and the festering little spots. So what we're going to do now is our second shade. We're going to do the faces here, the heads of these blight grenades, the ones on the back here as well. So all of those, because they're skin and they're flesh, we're going to do those with a SERAPHIM sepia, and that'll add a little bit of more reddish, fleshy color to them. So we'll do that now and meet back here again when that's all finished. So this is our foul BlightSpawn now that we finished with the SERAPHIM sepia. And as you can see, the heads are nice and detailed now. So we're going to move on to a few other things. We're going to start doing some of these tubes here. So we've got one coming out of the chest here. And then we've got a tentacle that comes around the arm out here to the back. And then we have this big tube here. And then we have this small little feeder as well over there. So all of these tubes, these fleshy entrail type tubes, I think we're going to treat as tentacles and entrails. And so we're going to do them with a base coat of BUGMAN'S Glow. And then we'll meet back here for a shade. So this is our foul BlightSpawn now that we've finished with the BUGMAN'S Glow. So we did this tube here, as well as the one coming out of the neck and the tentacle that wraps around to the bomb. So those are there. We didn't do the big tube because I didn't like how that looked for the color. So we'll probably come back and do that in a darker gray after we're finished with these. So with the fleshy bits done, what we're going to do now is add a shade to them. And we're going to do a little bit of Reikland Fleshshade. And then that should get some of the details on the tentacles and things like that here. So we'll do that now. Be back when that's dry. So this is our foul BlightSpawn now that we finished with the Reikland Fleshshade. So after we finish with that, what we're going to do is just one more dry brush highlight on those tubes and those tentacles, which we'll do with some Cadian Fleshtone. And then that'll add a little bit of a fleshier tone to it. So we'll do that now and be back here in a few minutes once that one's finished. So back to our foul BlightSpawn. Now that we finished with all the small tubes and all of the skulls and everything like that, we're going to do this big feeder tube to the slime tube here. So what we're going to do with that, we could have left it fleshy like we did with those, but I think what we're going to do is make it gray instead. So we'll use a base of ESHEN gray, and we'll do that right here over that whole tube. And then what we'll do is add a dry brush of something like DAWNSTONE, just to add a highlight layer on that. So we'll do both of those now and be back here in a few minutes once that's all finished. So this is our foul BlightSpawn. And our next thing we're going to do is take a little bit of Ironbreaker and just do the metallics inside of these tubing here. There's just a few spots here, some on these coils here. So we'll just do those just to show the metal through the cabling. And we'll be back in a few minutes. So we'll probably do that with some Leadbelcher. And then we'll probably add a little bit of Nuln oil to it just to add the shade there. So we'll do that now and be right back in a few minutes. So this is our foul BlightSpawn here. And what we're going to do now is do his cloth down here below. So we've already done the chainmail and these decorative elements and the skull. So we're just going to do this little bit of cloth. We'll do it in red because that seems to be the color we're doing most of our Death Guard today. So we'll take a little bit of Khorne red for that. And then add a little bit of a shade of Nuln oil to darken it up, make it dirty. And then come back with a highlight of Khorne red again before we maybe put a highlight layer of Evil Sunz Scarlett or one of the other lighter reds just as an edge highlight there. So we'll do that up and be back in a few minutes once that's all finished. So this is our foul BlightSpawn now that we finish with the Khorne red cloak. So now that we're done with that, we're going to move on to a few other things, but we're almost finished the model. We're going to work on the spores here. So there's one there, as well as one embedded in the leg here. And there's a few other spots around, as well as any pustules or boils that are there. So in all those cases, there's one on this eye. We're going to do those with some Ungar flesh, which is definitely looks pus colored. Then we're probably going to shade it with some Reikland Fleshshade. And then probably come back over the top with Ungar flesh again. So that'll make it red and infected looking. And then we'll add some pus guile boil type thing over the top. So we'll do that now and be back here in just a few minutes once that's finished. So our foul BlightSpawn here has got all of his boils finished now. And the next thing we're going to do are the hilts of the plague grenades. So we've got one here, and then we've got the other ones hanging from his back here. So we're going to do all those with wooden handles, which is going to take a dryad bark base, followed by a Gorther brown dry brush. And with those two, we should get a nice wooden handle there to show up. So we'll do that now and be back in just a few minutes. So for our foul BlightSpawn, we're almost finished now. We've got a few pieces left to do. One of them is this coil up here. So we're going to treat that pretty much like a plasma coil. We're going to base coat it with one shade of green. So in this case, we'll probably use our Sybarite green. We'll fill in the grooves with a Nuln oil or something dark, Athonian camo shade or something. And then we'll come back and hit the highlight layers with some Moot green. And that'll create a nice glow. So we'll do that now. And then later on, you can even put Tesseract glow or something along those lines on it if you liked. But we probably won't need that. But we'll do that now. And then while we're doing the Sybarite green, we'll also do this section here for the background of the tank before we start filling in the slimy ooze. So we'll do both of those now and be back in a few minutes. So this here is our foul BlightSpawn now that we finished with the coils here. And as you can see, we did the Moot green like we said we were going to. Then we actually did a little bit of a dry brush of white scar right over the top, which created this nice little brightness effect right here. So that finished off our coils. And we're going to do something similar with the slime here. So we've got some here. We're going to do about halfway filled the tank, as well as some of the drips coming out. And with that one, we're going to do a base coat of Nibblet green, even though it says it's a dry paint. And then we're going to do a little bit of Moot green over the top of that, just to brighten it up a bit. We may even do a little bit of white scar over that, just in the highlight layers, just to pick up a little bit more of the highlight. So we'll do that for the slime and be back here in just a few minutes. So this here is our foul BlightSpawn now that we finished with our green slime. So as you can see, we did ever increasing levels of Moot green and then into some white scar, and they blended together, wet blended. We did the same thing on the tank, and it got increasingly brighter till we added a little bit of trace white up in the top here, just to create a foam effect. And then same thing on all the slimes, sort of a base coat and then a bit of a highlight and then just a edge highlight here. So as you can see, we've got a nice looking Noxious Blightbringer here. So our next thing we're going to do is work on the eye right here. So to match the rest of our Death Guard, we're going to make them shiny green eyes. So that's a twofold process. The first thing we're going to do is a little bit of Stormhost Silver, and then we're going to treat it as a gem. So we're going to put a tiny bit of Waystone Green over the top of that just to make it stand out. And that should almost be finished for the model. We'll probably do the base afterwards and then flock it and then come back here and see how we did. So we'll do that now and see you in a few minutes. So this here is our foul BlightSpawn now that we finished with the clear coat and the basing. So the model's pretty much finished, and hopefully you like the way it turned out. We're pretty happy with it ourselves. Now, if you thought this video was helpful and you want to leave a comment or a like, please feel free to do that below. It's all appreciated. If you want to leave a subscription, by all means, that definitely helps the channel. And otherwise than that, we will see you at our next painting video. There'll be some other photos of this model from other angles on the end of this video, so if you can always zoom in if you need to see things there. Otherwise than that, thank you for watching, and we will see you at our next video.